Everyone, welcome to our August webinar exploring the web editing options in ArcGIS. It's great to have you guys all here. We've got some really great demos to show with you guys, and hopefully you'll leave having learned a little bit more about the web editing options. Before we go straight into all of that, firstly, a quick introduction. So I'm Claudia Hodgson. I'm a customer success consultant here at Esri UK, and I work very closely with my fellow presenter, Eve Selby, also a customer success consultant. Just to cover the housekeeping side of things as well, as always, this webinar will be recorded. We'll share it in the follow-up email with you all, so you can have another watch of it later on or share it with your colleagues. In that follow-up email as well, there'll also be a handful of useful resources for each of the topics that we're going to be walking through. So again, you can go away and learn a little bit more about what we're going to be showing today if you'd like to. There will also be a survey in that email where you can go ahead and provide some feedback on today's webinar, and we'd really appreciate if you could do that. As I did mention at the start as well, we will have a Q&A session. It will be at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to go ahead and submit as many questions as you like all throughout the webinar. We will get to as many of them as we can at the end. We will be going in popularity, so you can upvote questions. So go ahead, and if you see one that you also want to know the answer to, go ahead and upvote that. It is hosted in Slido, so you can see the details here. You can either scan the QR code using your phone, or you can head to slido.com, and then you'll have to pop in the event code, which is ESRI 1608. There will also be some polls in Slido towards the end of the webinar, again, just to gather some quick feedback. So if you do have time, we'd really appreciate it there, just so we can help to shape these webinars to suit you guys. So let's go ahead and look at the agenda for today. So we're going to be walking through 3 different options for editing in the web. We'll firstly cover the basic editing options that you get available for your feature layers stored in your ArcGIS Online or your ArcGIS Enterprise content. And we'll also cover about how you can actually manage those editing options, making sure that you as the owner will always be in control of that data. We'll then move on to the editing options available in Map Viewer using the Edit and Forms tab. And then lastly, Eve is going to showcase some of our more advanced web editing capabilities that's available in Suite for ArcGIS. Now, I won't say too much, but Suite is our app that's dedicated to accurate collection and editing of data using various ruling and smart tools that Eve has got a number of different demos to showcase all of those later on. So let's get started first with having a look at feature layer editing. Now, before we actually show any of those editing options, firstly, we wanted to cover how you can go about managing exactly who can edit and what edits can be made. So again, just making sure that you're in control of your data, you know exactly what can and can't be edited by others. So by default, the only users who can edit a feature layer is the owner of that layer and the organization administrator. It's then up to them whether they want to enable editing within the organization, and that's by ticking the Enable Editing checkbox that you can find in the Settings tab of the feature layer item page. Now, it's important to note, even with that enabled, not all users will instantly have editing access. It's only for the users who have the editing permissions set up within their user type that they can then make changes to that data. You can also control who you share it with within your organization by sharing it with set groups, or you can even share it with groups external to your organization as well if you need to. And you'll also see there you can keep track of any edits you've got the option to keep track of the changes. So are people adding features, deleting or updating? Or you can keep track of exactly who is editing the data. So taking the editor's name, for example, the date and time. It is important to remember that if you do have incredibly large data sets that you're wanting to track edits for, or maybe you're making frequent edits to that layer, that will increase the storage credits for that layer because you're tracking those changes. So that's just something to be aware of. Another editing permissions option is if you want to share it with the public. So perhaps you want to actually kind of get engagement with the public and allow them to add data to a map, for example, add details of the data and images. You can enable that kind of interaction and that engagement by enabling the public data collection that you can also find in the settings tab. But it also goes far beyond this, and you have far greater control than just enabling or disabling the editing access. You can also control whether users can just add features, just delete or update. They could have access to all three of those editing types if they need to. And you'll see under the update checkbox there, you also can even specify whether users can only update the attributes of the data or maybe the attributes and the geometry. So you have quite a bit of control there as well. So really, you also, again, with those checkboxes of the add, delete, and update, you don't need to worry about whether users are mistakenly deleting features when they should only be adding or updating, for example. So it's just all about having that control over your data. On the right-hand side there, you can see as well, you can even control which fields within your feature layer can be edited. So you can head to the data tab, again, of your feature layer item page, and you navigate to fields, and you'll see a screen that looks like this, where you can actually specify whether a field is editable or not. So for example, if it's the, I don't know, the ID, the location or name, for example, you might not want those values to be touched at all, and you could then specify that the field is non-editable. And just to show you exactly what kind of edits you can do directly from the feature layer item page, again, if you have those editing permissions and this is an editable layer, you can go ahead directly into the data table and edit attributes straight away. Even if it's an uploaded data set, you can easily just come in and make any updates or amendments that you need to your data. And of course, as well, you can also add fields to existing data sets under the field tab of under the fields tab you can see there, which again is in the data page of your feature layer item page. But there's also another option if you're wanting to have different editor settings for the same feature layer, same hosted feature layer. So this is where hosted feature layer views come in. A feature layer view, it essentially creates a new layer item of your source layer. So it means you can then apply different editor settings to those two different layers. And because as well, that second layer you're creating is a view of your data in the source layer, any edits that are made in that source will then appear in the view. So an example of this, maybe you're wanting to allow members of your organization to be able to edit that source hosted feature layer. But then you also want to share it with the public. You can then specify that feature layer view as a read-only view. So again, you can kind of alter the editor settings based on the view or the source layer. Again, for this as well, only the owner of the hosted feature layer or the organization administrator can create a hosted feature layer view. So it's really important just to know these editing options that you have at this level, but possibly more importantly as well, how you can actually go about controlling and managing that editing access for all of your layers, making sure that you know exactly what can and can't be edited by specific users. So those are the editing options available at the feature layer level. But let's now have a look at what kind of editing can be carried out in the map viewer, and specifically the new map viewer. Now, there are a number of different editing options here, so we're just going to walk through each of them. And we're jumping into the new map viewer here. I've got, this is just a data set of some green spaces. And let's go through and actually firstly start with how you can add and delete features. Now, this is a really straightforward workflow. Thankfully, with the Edit tab, you can see on the right-hand side here, we're given all of the tools to really do some basic editing directly in our map. For example, starting with deleting features, I simply need to use the Select tool. I can select a feature that I've already got on my map, and I can go ahead and click Delete. You'll notice it's providing me with a warning. This is because there is no redo or undo capabilities, so you really need to be sure this is kind of the appropriate edit for you before you click that big red delete button. But as long as you're sure, you can go ahead and delete that feature and it's going to be removed straight away from your map. So it's making a direct edit to your feature layer. It's also then just as easy to go ahead and create a new feature. Again, we've got all of the tools in this tab here. I can simply go in and pick exactly what new feature I want to add. So let's go ahead and add a bowling green. We also have some additional tools actually to make this even easier for you as well. So there's the snapping capabilities. You can also control which layers you want it to snap to. We've got geometry guides and tooltips. So let's go ahead and turn all of that on. And then it really is simply a case of just coming into your map and starting to draw your feature. You'll notice there that it allowed me to snap to that existing green space that we've got at the bottom of this new feature that I'm drawing here. You'll also see that I've got these kind of orange geometry guides to support me with how I'm drawing this polygon. And I've also got that additional information like the area of this green space that I'm creating. If I just double click that, it then takes me out of the draw mode, and you'll see I then can add in the name and make sure the function of this green space is correct before I can then click create, and it automatically has drawn that in for me, and that's an additional feature in my feature layer now. As well as both adding and deleting features, you can also actually edit feature geometry, again, directly within the map viewer. Similar to the delete features, again, you just want to use the select tool here on the right-hand side. I can select the green space that I've just created, and if I double click, you'll see I can actually go in and manipulate this shape using like the individual vertices, and I can really change it to whatever I want to, really. Let's just go with that. And again, we can click update and change any of this if we need to. You could also actually move the entire feature if you need to. Again, just a simple drag and drop, and I can move this feature to wherever I need for this edit. Let's go ahead and pop it there, and I can click update. So those are the kind of adding, deleting, and editing your geometry of your features. But you can also dig into editing the attributes of your features as well. A really straightforward way of doing this in Map Viewer, if I just hop over to my other tab, and if I open up my layers and my attribute table, I can go ahead and actually edit attributes directly within this table. Again, obviously you need the appropriate permissions and it has to be an editable layer, but then I can simply go in, and here I could change the condition of this asset, and it's automatically applying all of this for me. But Map Viewer also has another editing option that enables you to actually create a tailored editing experience. To reduce the time you'll spend inputting or editing your data, it really just streamlines the experience for you. So for those of you who use ArcGIS field maps, you may be familiar with the term smart forms. So this capability is actually now is also available in the map viewer. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that now. Creating a form, it allows you to specify exactly what fields users can edit, and you can configure forms with various expressions, hints and calculations to speed up this process and really to simplify it for the editor that's going in and actually editing these attributes. So straight away, when I open up this form window, you'll notice I have the option to convert my pop-up. So if I go ahead and click that, it's automatically filling out this form with all of the fields that I've already got set up in my pop-up. So it's really just kind of shortening, speeding up this process for me of configuring the form. If there are any fields here that were in my pop-up, I don't want it in the field, in the form, sorry, I can go ahead and really easily just remove them. And then the same goes for adding them back in. It's a really straightforward kind of drag and drop into the position that I need to on this form. So there are a number of different things you can do in this form window to kind of configure it to suit you, and again, just make it as simple an experience for the editor. One thing that I think is really good to do, especially when you've got a lot of fields to add to this form and that you'll be editing, is to make use of the form element group. Again, I can really easily drag that into position. I can name this form if I want to. Let's go for asset information. And then it's simply a case of selecting all of the fields you want to add. So let's just go for all of these. And again, dragging and dropping it in. So it's a really straightforward interface to configure these forms. You can also dig into each and every individual field if you want to, specifying exactly how they can be viewed, how they can be edited or populated as well. And just by clicking on this first one, asset ID, you can see we've got options, kind of basic details like editing the display name. We can add descriptions if we want to. But you'll also see beneath, we've got these options to specify whether fields are editable, if they're required or visible. So for example, for the asset ID, let's not make this editable. I'm going to be only editing existing assets, so I've already got the asset ID, so I can turn off this checkbox. You might also notice, though, you do have the option to set up dynamic behavior, for these conditions with the use of arcade expressions. So let's go ahead and let's go for last inspection date. We're going to make this a conditionally editable field. So we'll write an expression, and only if that expression is met can this field then become editable. And this is actually a really straightforward workflow. I can simply click on, based on what condition I want to apply this to, which in this case is editable. I can simply go ahead to the cog, create a new expression, and really easily with this expression builder, I could specify, let's go for example, that the last inspection date is before, and let's say all inspections should be carried out every half a year. So we'll go January 1st and we can click done. So this field is then only going to become editable if I click on a feature that has not been inspected since January 1st of this year. Obviously, you can see as well, you could then apply this to the required or visible as well. And you can also calculate fields as well, and then maybe turn off that visibility as well, because it's automatically calculating it for you in the background. As I said, you can also dig into all of these kind of details up here as well if you want to. So let's go ahead and actually, for assign to, I could add a description here that this is the editor's full username, for example, just providing a prompt for that editor to come in and know exactly what they need to be populating these fields with. Again, just making it for an easy editing experience. Another really nice capability of editing in Map Viewer is that it supports the editing of related records. As well as that, you can also see I can actually add in related records into this form. So I can add it into the bottom here. One thing to note about this capability, specifically for editing related records, is that currently Map Viewer only supports editing records that are stored in a feature to table relationship. So it doesn't currently support feature to feature or table to table relationships. But now let's go ahead and let's just click OK on this form. And we'll open up the Edit tab and click on one of these features. Let's go this one. Now you notice when I click on that, we've now got this form that we have just configured. Straight away, it's nicely kind of structured. I can hide away the asset information if I need to. You'll notice that this asset ID, I can't go in and change that because we made that non-editable. I've also got the prompts here as well if I want to go ahead and add in my username. And you'll also see this last inspection date. This is where we set up the conditional editing. And because the last inspection date was before January 1st, 2023, by quite a bit actually, we can go in and we can actually change the date here and carry out another inspection. So hopefully here this has kind of shown that configuring a form really can streamline that editing experience, increasing the efficiency, reducing the data review process as well. And this is just a really basic example. You can create far more complex expressions and far more different kind of ruling than I've done here. This is just a kind of intro of what forms could do. Now, just jumping back to my slides quickly. All of these editing options that I've just walked through, that are core options readily available in your portal. We've not even discussed the options available to edit in the web with our applications as well. We've got ArcGIS Instant Apps, Experience Builder, Web App Builder, all of which offer editing capabilities and the widgets to add directly into your apps to allow them to carry out editing data within the apps that you're building. It is important to remember, though, Web App Builder will be retiring, so it's advised to look at those other offerings shown here beforehand. Now, all three of these apps, as I mentioned, they're readily available. You have access to them with access to your online or enterprise accounts. But we're now going to move on to another offering, which is available as an add-on to your portal. And that's the more advanced web editing option that is Suite for ArcGIS. So I'm now going to pass over to Eve, who's going to demo a few of its core capabilities.
Thank you so much, Claudia. So, as it's been mentioned, Suite is a web editing experience toolkit. But what exactly does that mean? Well, it is an app for data collection that has a highly flexible app builder included to allow you to customize your editing workflow to be exactly what your end user needs for them to experience an intuitive, fast, and accurate data collection. When it comes to its benefits, it's incredibly quick for end users to be able to go through their data editing. It's versatile. You have options to build no, low, or more advanced coding interfaces. And this is what makes it great for a variety of use cases, which you'll be seeing shortly through our demonstrations. It's also accurate. Through your configuration of various rules, data can be collected correctly the first time, every time. And this in turn makes it very cost effective. It eliminates the need to have quality assurance checks, which can be expensive. In turn, it also saves you time as people are able to streamline their data collection workflows. This also in turn saves money. And it means that no GIS experts are needed in the field, which allows your geospatial team to concentrate on more analytically advantaged projects by widening the user base to these non-GIS specialists. Besides being a great way to capture information correctly the first time round, it also allows end users to make informed decisions on the fly. And when it comes to placement within the ArcGIS system, it is integrated into ArcGIS Online and Enterprise. It can run in the browser, on-premise, or in the cloud, and will leverage your existing ArcGIS investment. It can also be taken offline. So, when it comes to our demonstrations, what do I want to be the highlights? First, we're going to be going into what the interface looks like, both from an end user perspective, as well as how you would go about in your configuration of the app, how to go about these basic and more sophisticated web edits, and then how the end user can not only make these quick edits, but how they can begin to make other decisions based on dynamic feedback. And then finally, we're going to streamline this workflow further with some semi-automated processes. So let's jump right into it. So this is what our layout looks like for the end user. It is very map focused with accessibility on both the desktop and tablet device sizes. It's meant to be approachable with the purpose of having anyone be able to edit this GIS data regardless of their experience level. On the left-hand side, we have our panel. These act as helper tools, which are customizable. It can be a minimalistic UI, like having find and layers, but you could also include other options like a base map button to change the underlying map on your screen. And then later within this demonstration, or these demonstrations, we're going to be touching on the flexibility you have to make this side panel your own. You could bring in charts or on-the-fly calculations, but more on that later. And then we also have a variety of more complex tools along the bottom to provide more context for the end user whilst they're editing. So if we look into this area of interest for our building demo, we can see along the top different ways that the end user can interact with the data. They can pan around the area of interest. They could select a specific region and see the corresponding properties. But we can also get into the web editing side of things too, by selecting the type of polygon we'd like to create. Now, if you have a steady hand, then you're more than welcome to go in with a standard or freehand experience to begin to digitize a land parcel. But as someone who's not as confident in my hand-eye coordination, I always like to go in with this follow tool. And it also acts as a great way to demonstrate how easy it is to make these accurate data edits. By using this follow tool, it edits against existing data for increased accuracy. This snapping allows you to snap to the boundary, which avoids slivers of data being missed as well. But in case you do make any errors, you're always welcome to use our undo and redo buttons, which is a capability distinct to Suite, as mentioned by Claudia earlier, as it's not available within Map Viewer. But this also leads nicely within our first key topic and key point of Suite, which is accurate data collection from the point of entry with quality checks. So when it comes to editors making a potential mistake, such as creating a building outside of the area of interest, you can see that Suite automatically recognized this mistake and clipped the building to the specific boundary. So how would one go about building this? Let's now jump into our web editor. So this is what it would look like from a configuration side of things. We have it split into multiple editors. The wireframe editor, which allows you to customize more of the end user experience, but also our data rules editor, which is where we will be going for configuring the underlying rules that data must follow. And then topology rules is where you would go to add spatial constraints, either within a single layer or multiple. And as you can see, these big buttons allow for a simple way to create rule configurations, like not having overlap within buildings or not having holes or allowing them. And if we go into our multi-layer, this is where we regulate how layers can interact with one another. Here you can see that building layers or building outlines must be constrained within the land parcels. Otherwise, they're scrubbed upon completion of the feature, which prevents editors or edits before they're made. So within this first application, we've already seen the power of topological rules, which is a way to maintain data quality from that point of entry, and how customizable it is as a web designer for your use case, along with it being incredibly quick to implement. There are also other things that we've gone through to show how you can speed up and support the web editing workflow, like having an intuitive layout, being able to undo or redo, or even one of my favorites, the magnifying glass, to allow you to drill down to a specific area of interest. So with topology rules, it automatically makes changes needed as the user edits features. But sometimes it's also helpful to have additional signaling so that end users are better informed as they're making decisions and learn how they can make better edits going forward. This is when we're going to be jumping in to our next demonstration. In this case, highlighting the power of dynamic visual feedback. Here we have a biodiversity net gain model, which has a factory where they're trying to better increase the biodiversity within their area to have more sustainable land use planning. They're interested in seeing what would happen if they created a pond or multiple ponds to help with the wildlife. So in doing so, what happens if I decide to begin creating a pond here? If I were the end user, I would see right away that this is not a great place to begin creating a pond due to this immediate alert. as you can see, it means that end users with this visual feedback will immediately see the impact of their edits through these HTML messages, whether it's because of a public right-of-way and a bright red buffer and an additional context through the alert, or perhaps providing supplementary information through this breeding bird area, which might be another place not to have a pond under construction. And so let's go into our wireframe editor to see how one would go about creating this. If we go into the map feedback, we can jump into the scripting area just to see how this was built. So you can see the different types of feedback that one would be able to create, as well as the Arcade script where this was built. Arcade is a lightweight scripting environment, but if you're somewhat daunted by the prospect of getting started in Arcade, this is where we have a variety of phenomenal examples to help jumpstart you in this journey, including how you'd go about creating HTML label feedback. So, what other feedback options are available to help inform editors? If we go into the biodiversity panel, which is a custom panel that we've configured, we can see the current biodiversity score for the land surrounding this building, as well as the different types of habitats available. And so if I create a small pond in this area, we can see the biodiversity score and habitat automatically update as this change was made. If we now go into our editor, we can see how this was done as well. By adding a new type of panel, you can see the variety of elements that are available for increased customization. And this also includes ways that you could connect to other data. For example, let's say you have surveyors that are going to be collecting information about wildlife spottings within the area. That could then be brought in to the Suite application to connect multiple data sources. So we've now gone through a few different examples, both more focusing on some outdoor use cases, whether it's for land use planning or biodiversity. But I've also been mentioning how broad and flexible Suite can be, which is why I want to hop into our third and final demonstration, which talks a little bit more about indoor planning. So this is the Millennium House building site, which is where one of our Esri UK headquarters is. And using Suite, you could use it to add external features like additional shrubs or car park spaces. But using our levels icon, we can also begin to filter through these different floors of the building. It also, as you can see, Suite is able to correctly filter between floors, but it also correctly symbolizes these rooms and significant objects. Now, I've shown you how you can create a new feature, whether it be a building outline or a pond, but what if you're wanting to create multiple identical or similar features repeatedly, such as a few different meeting rooms? This is where stencils can be incredibly useful. Now, stencils allow you to limit repetitive tasks. And so if we go into our fifth room, you can also see the diversity of stencil options available. With these stencils, they will auto-populate properties with the correct information as well as the symbology. But now, let's see what happens if we take this streamlined workflow even further. This is where we can use smart templates. So let's say that I want to create a set of rows for this dinosaur-shaped conference room. And I want the set of rows or the set of desks to be from head to tail for this dinosaur. I can specify the distance between workstations, go through the review process, and this line is automatically created. Now, what would have been a manual task of adding in individual desks, which could be time-consuming and perhaps inaccurate if I don't have a steady hand, it can now be done within this drawing of a single line, as you've just seen. And again, all would be pre-populated with the correct information for the floor, the item type, and so on. So let's dive back in to the web editing side of things to see how this was built. Now, if we go in to the Create section and the feature templates, we can see how this was built. Using smart templates, it lets you automate the creation of multiple features, and this could also be across multiple layers within a single action. You can specify the type of capture, the capture parameters, which are what the editor will fill in during feature collection. In this case, you saw my changing of spacing between workstations, as well as the number of rows that we've specified. Then there's also capture feedback, which gives you the opportunity to provide more visual feedback as the end user digitizes these new features. And then the execution tasks. So once the end user is given their parameters, they finalize their capture shape, you can begin to execute these tasks, which will either insert, update, or delete features from a single or multiple layers. All of these, which make it easy to stick to regulations which planners need to follow. And again, emphasizes this flexibility of Suite as a web editor across sectors. It doesn't have to just be for indoor planners, rules and regulations, but could be for our land authorities that we've talked about earlier, or other sustainability indexes. So now let's jump back in for our closing thoughts. So when it comes to the key takeaways of Suite, you only need to configure any of these applications once. Then it can be distributed widely to collect data correctly the first time and every time. You've seen it's incredibly flexible of an application to be whatever you need, both in the use case for end users, but also in how you're able to construct these applications as a web app builder. It will save you time, it saves resources, all while improving your workflow across the board, allowing you to capture this data accurately. And again, for the end user, no specialist GIS knowledge is required. It can be for everyone, regardless of their skill set. And so with that, I hope you've enjoyed getting to see these demos, and I will pass it back to Claudia to close us out.
Thank you very much, Eve. So hopefully there you've seen kind of the wide range of editing capabilities that we have across those different offerings that we've shown today. I know we've shown quite a lot, but there's going to be loads of useful resources in the follow-up email that we're going to send over to you guys, all relating to exactly what we've shown today. So yeah, there'll be lots of useful information for you guys to take a look at there. Just quickly to say, we would love for you all to join us again, whether it's at our next upcoming webinar in September, which is all about building stronger foundations in ArcGIS Pro, or if you'd like to, we've got our upcoming conference in Perth, the Esri UK Scottish Conference, which is on the 19th of September, where we'll have a whole heap of technical sessions and various different demos to showcase more of the ArcGIS system. So all that's left now is the Q&A session. We appreciate we've gone a little over on time, so we've got far less time than we'd hoped to go through your questions. And there's an awful lot of them, so thank you so much to everyone that has been submitting your questions. We will get to as many of them as we can. We've also got some kind of answers in the background that we'll get to you guys if we can't do it live over the next few minutes. But I'm also joined by a couple of my colleagues. So Carly Jackson is here to help us out in the Q&A session, who is the product manager for Suite for ArcGIS. So we've got a couple of questions in for Suite. Just kicking things off though, we've got the most popular question at the moment is, are there any plans to provide backups for data sets so that edits can be undone by reverting back to a previous version? To keep it short and sweet, no, I'm not aware of any kind of plans to allow for backups. Obviously, it's not available in the kind of feature layer or map viewer edits, but that is a capability of Suite, so it can revert back to delete previous edits and revert back to datasets with no edits carried out. So that is that one, short and sweet answer. Next one, any plans to allow standalone tables to be edited in field maps? For some reason, this doesn't seem possible unless they are related to a feature layer. I don't know if any of my team know the answer to this. Again, I'm not aware of any plans for this. It's worth, if you also haven't seen any kind of plans for this in any of the latest blogs of field maps, I'd also always say if it's a capability that you're keen to see in the product, head to the Esri community site and add it in as an idea to try and kind of drive those changes for the product. But sadly, yeah, I'm not aware of any kind of action on that, sadly. Next one is, what about snapping to the base map? Oh, this one we have replied to already, just to try and get to as many of these questions as you can, so hopefully you guys can see there. But to cut short again, features in a base map you can't snap to. So you can see more of an in-depth answer hopefully on that question in the Slido session. Next up, we have, what are the benefits of using Suite for ArcGIS over field maps and web experience? Don't know.
Yes,
Carly, you want to? Oh, there you are.
There I am. Thanks, Claudia. So to keep it short and sweet, I would say that Suite very much complements the other products in the system. Field maps Field maps is primarily designed for quick and simple data collection out in the field. Suite is probably more of a solution if you're concerned about topological editing and maintaining topology as you're making those edits, whether in the web or in the field. I'd say is the main thing. Obviously, you know, if there are specific things that you're wondering, then you please do contact your CSM and we can help, you know, for a more specific answer.
Brilliant, thank you, Carly. There's a very similar one, just 2 down. How would you go about comparing it to other Esri mobile data capture options? Is there online comparison? Are you happy for us to tick that one off as well, or do you want to add anything else to that one?
No, I think right now, yeah, I'm more than happy to tick them off under the same answer.
Perfect, thank you very much. Next up, we've got, in the data tab of the layer, will there be an option to select by attributes to bulk edit directly in the table? That is a very good question. Again, I'm not aware of this becoming a capability. I haven't seen anywhere that hinting that this could come, sadly. Obviously, you do have kind of the other editing options. You've got the editor widget. And obviously for kind of more advanced bulk editing, you've always got ArcGIS Pro allowing you to do that kind of select by attributes capabilities, but sadly I'm not aware of anything coming in AGL. If anyone else from the team does, feel free to shout out, but sadly I'm not aware of anything coming. So I'll go ahead and tick that one off. Next up, Suite looks great, but it would be great to have this functionality in Pro. Can Suite edit local datasets, or does it only work against feature services?
So Suite works against, so primarily Suite works against feature services within ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise. The only thing I may consider is if you've got if you're working in an ArcGIS Enterprise environment, you may have an Enterprise geodatabase, and that may then sort of link by publishing that data to Enterprise that way. But we don't, at this moment in time, offer editing against completely local data.
Okay, perfect. And you're right to grab the next one as well, Carly, if you can see that one.
Oh, let me just check what the next one is. Can't find the questions now, there's so many.
Oh, so is there any way Suite can be hooked up to the iDocs uniform mapping?
We'll have to get back to you on that one.
Yep.
At this time.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think we're very tight on time now. Thank you so much to everyone. The questions are still coming in, which is absolutely fantastic. We're going to try and get to some more of these because there's just so many fantastic questions. So keep the Slido session open. We've run out of time to carry on live. If you keep the Slido session open, like we have with that top one, we'll reply to as many of them as we can and get back to you guys. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Kylie, as well, for joining us for Suite for ArcGIS. I hope everyone has enjoyed this session, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you so much.